Before you hear a single word on a VoIP call, the two phones have already had a complete conversation of their own. They've introduced themselves, agreed on how to send audio, confirmed the other side is ready, and only then does the call connect. That exchange follows a strict, predictable order, and when a call misbehaves, with one-way audio, no ringback, or a drop a few minutes in, the reason is almost always sitting right there in the sequence. In this video, I'll walk you through what a SIP call flow actually looks like, the handful of messages that take a call from dial to talk and back to hang up, how the audio path gets negotiated, and where a session border controller fits in. We'll focus on what each step does so you come away with a good understanding of how a call is shaped. The simplest way to understand a SIP call is to break it into 3 phases. Every message you'll see fits somewhere in that structure. The first phase is setup. One side asks to start a call, the other rings and then answers, and the two confirm they're connected. This is also where most call problems show up, so it's the phase we'll spend the most time on in this video. The second is the media phase, the actual conversation flowing between the two phones. During this phase, the signaling goes almost completely silent. The messages that set the call up have done their job, and the audio now flows on its own separate path. The third is teardown. When somebody hangs up, one quick message ends the call, the other side confirms, and the connection is terminated. So the mental model is simple. Set the call up, let the audio flow, tear it down. Let's start with the setup phase. In a basic successful SIP call, setup follows a familiar pattern. And once you know what each message does, the whole sequence becomes much easier to read. It begins with an invite. It does exactly what it sounds like. The caller sends an invitation to start a call addressed to the recipient. This message starts the setup process, and it usually includes the caller's proposed audio details, such as which codecs it supports and where media should be sent. That media information is carried in SDP, the part of the message that describes how the audio should work. Next, almost instantly comes 100 trying. Think of it as the network saying, "Okay, I'm working on it." Its job is to reassure the caller's side that the invite was received so it does not keep resending the same request. After that, the call usually moves into ringing or progress. With 180 ringing, the recipient side is being alerted. In many call flows, 180 is sent without SDP, so the caller's side generates the ringback tone locally while the call continues to be set up. You may also see 183 session progress with SDP. This is commonly used when the network needs to provide something before the call is answered, such as a ringback tone, an announcement, or the media details needed to prepare the audio path. When the recipient answers, their side sends back a 200 OK. This means the call is accepted. In a simple flow, the 200 OK carries the media answer, confirming the codec and media path for the answered call. In flows with early media, some media details may already have been exchanged earlier through 183 session progress with SDP. Finally comes the ACK. After the recipient side sends the 200 OK, the caller side sends back an ACK to confirm it received that answer. Once that happens, the call is fully established. So the simple setup rhythm is invite, working on it, ringing or progress, answered, acknowledged. 5 core steps with some real-world variation around ringback, early media, and SDP. Once setup is complete, the call moves into the media phase. At this point, it's important to separate the signaling from the audio. SIP, which stands for Session Initiation Protocol, sets the call up, but it does not carry your voice. The audio itself travels separately. So how do the two phones agree on how to send audio? Tucked inside that opening invite and the 200 OK answer is a smaller negotiation. The calling side lists all the audio formats it can speak in order of preference. These formats are called codecs with names like G711 and G729. The answering side picks the one it likes best that it also supports. That's how every call settles on a common codec before a single word is spoken. Once that's agreed, the actual audio flows over a separate channel using a protocol called Real-Time Transport Protocol, known as RTP. RTP carries the voice in tiny packets, usually about 1 every 20 milliseconds, in both directions for the length of the call. That's why the signaling goes quiet. SIP has finished setting up the session, and the audio now flows separately. That separation is also where 2 classic problems come from. If the two sides can't agree on a codec, the call never connects. And if the audio gets pointed at an address the other side can't reach, you get a call that connects perfectly but has no sound. Most calls go through cleanly, but when one doesn't, SIP is good about telling you why. Instead of a vague error, you get back a specific numbered response code, and a small handful of them cover most common failures. There's a code for a busy line, a code for no answer, and a code that asks the caller to prove who they are before the call goes through. Even after the call is connected, SIP can still make changes to the session. It can put someone on hold, renegotiate the codec, or transfer the call somewhere else, all without ending the call and starting again. And when the conversation is over, the call moves into the teardown phase. One side sends a bye to end the session, and the other side responds with a 200 OK to confirm it. That final exchange clears the call down cleanly. So where does a session border controller fit in? Right in the middle, and it changes the flow in a way worth understanding. An SBC sits directly between the two sides of the call, but it does more than simply pass messages back and forth. In SIP terms, an SBC usually acts as a back-to-back user agent. That means it separates the call into two legs, one between the caller and the SBC, and another between the SBC and the destination. Each side thinks it is talking to the other party, but in reality, both are talking to the SBC. That gives the SBC control over each side of the conversation independently. That's what makes the SBC so useful, because it can adjust the flow on each side independently. It can rewrite the setup messages so a picky downstream system gets the format it expects. It can route the audio through itself to convert between codecs when the two sides don't share one. It can translate a confusing failure code into one that makes more sense on the other side. And it can hide the details of your network from the outside world. The payoff is interoperability. Two systems that could never talk directly will happily connect through an SBC, because it reshapes the call flow on each leg to match what that leg expects. So that's the shape of a SIP call: a setup phase, a media phase, and a teardown phase. SIP sets up the session, negotiates the basic audio details, and confirms when the call starts and ends. The actual voice travels separately over RTP, and when an SBC sits in the middle, it can manage each side of the call independently. If you want to go deeper, including what each SIP message carries, how the headers work, and how to read a real SIP trace line by line, we've linked the full written guide in the description. And if you're building or troubleshooting voice networks, this is exactly where ProSBC comes in. It gives you full control over SIP signaling, media handling, routing, interoperability, and security, so you can shape how calls behave across different networks and systems. You can try it yourself with a free ProSBC lab license. You will find the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Drop your questions in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.